Welcome to the Sleepy Jedi Podcast. Relax and join us as we journey across distant star systems, where a brave Jedi embarks on a perilous race against time to save a child kidnapped by the dark and powerful Sith. The light and dark sides of the Force clash in this tale of courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond between good and evil. In the outer rim, where the stars seemed to twinkle dimmer and the planets lay far apart like forgotten gems, a shadow had fallen. The news spread like a cold breeze through the galaxy. A child, gifted and strong with the Force, had been taken by the Sith. Rumors filled every cantina and backwater station, whispers of the Sith's growing power and their intentions for the young and innocent. The Sith sought to corrupt the child, bending their will to the dark side, turning their potential into a weapon for evil. The Jedi had to act quickly. Time was not on their side, for the longer the child remained in the grip of the dark side, the harder it would be to bring them back. A single Jedi was chosen for this mission, one who had proven time and again to be steadfast in the face of darkness. The Council believed this Jedi's connection to the Force was strong enough to counter whatever the Sith had planned. Yet, even with the greatest hope, there was a sense of unease. The Sith were cunning, and they would not let go of their prize easily. The Jedi's journey began on a desert planet, where the air shimmered with heat and the ground was cracked and dry. It was a place where life struggled to survive, much like the hope that flickered faintly for the kidnapped child. The Jedi stood alone, their cloak billowing slightly in the hot wind, gazing at the distant horizon. Somewhere out there the Sith had hidden the child, but finding them would not be easy. The Sith were masters of deception, cloaking their presence, masking their intentions. The Force, however, could guide the way. Closing their eyes, the Jedi reached out with the Force, letting its currents flow through them like a river. They sensed the life all around, the insects burrowing beneath the sand, the wind stirring grains of dust, and far, far away, a presence. It was faint, like a whisper carried on the wind, but unmistakable. The child was alive. The Jedi could feel their fear, a tremor in the Force, and beyond that, a shadow, dark and cold, wrapping itself around the child like a suffocating fog. The Jedi's path was clear. They mounted their speeder, a sleek machine built for speed across the rough terrain, and set off toward the mountains on the horizon. Time was slipping away like sand through their fingers. Every moment the child remained with the Sith. Their connection to the light dimmed. But the Jedi would not give up. Not yet, not ever. As the speeder zoomed across the desert, the Jedi's mind raced as fast as the wind rushing past. They had faced the Sith before, warriors of the dark side who thrived on fear and anger. They were relentless, and their power came from a place of deep hatred. The Sith would not stop until they had molded the child into a vessel of darkness, a new weapon for their cause. But the Jedi had something stronger. They had hope, and hope, when nurtured by the light, could shine brighter than any shadow the Sith could cast. The mountains loomed closer now, jagged and towering, their peaks disappearing into swirling clouds. Somewhere in those crags and caves, the Sith had taken the child. The Jedi could feel the pull of the dark side growing stronger as they neared. It was as though the very air had thickened, heavy with malice and fear. But fear was a tool of the Sith, and the Jedi would not succumb to it. After hours of riding, the speeder came to a halt at the base of the mountain range. The Jedi dismounted and surveyed the path ahead. The rocky terrain was treacherous, full of narrow passes and steep cliffs. But there was no time to hesitate. The child needed to be rescued, and every second counted. The Jedi began the climb, their boots gripping the uneven rock as they scaled the first ridge. The Force guided their every movement, heightening their senses, making them aware of every loose stone, every hidden crevice. The path was winding and difficult, but the Jedi pressed on, never losing sight of their goal. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a plateau high above the desert floor. From here, they could see for miles the vast emptiness of the desert stretching out beneath them. But the view was not what drew the Jedi's attention. It was the dark fortress that rose from the mountain's peak ahead, its spires like claws reaching toward the sky. This was the stronghold of the Sith, the place where the child was being held. The Jedi could feel the darkness emanating from the fortress, a palpable force that chilled the air. But there was something else, too, a glimmer of light, faint but present. The child was still there, still connected to the light. The Jedi's heart swelled with determination. The Sith had not won yet. Quietly, the Jedi moved toward the fortress, their senses alert for any sign of danger. The Sith would be expecting them. They would be prepared. But the Jedi had no choice. They had to press forward. As they approached the gates of the fortress, they reached out with the Force, searching for any hidden traps or enemies lying in wait. There was a faint disturbance like ripples in a pond, and the Jedi froze, listening. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, a Sith apprentice, cloaked in black, their face obscured by a mask. They ignited their red lightsaber, its blade hissing to life like a serpent. The Jedi stepped forward, their own lightsaber springing to life in a flash of blue. The two stood facing each other, the air crackling with tension. The Sith apprentice spoke, their voice dripping with malice. "You're too late, Jedi. The child belongs to the dark side now." But the Jedi remained calm, their grip steady on their lightsaber. "The child still has the light within them. I can feel it." With a snarl, the Sith lunged forward, their red blades slashing through the air. The Jedi met the attack with a swift parry, their movements fluid and precise. The two warriors clashed, their lightsabers humming and sparking as they danced across the rocky plateau. The Sith was strong, their attacks fueled by anger and hatred, but the Jedi did not falter. They fought with a clear mind, letting the Force guide their actions, trusting in the light. The battle raged on, the sound of clashing sabers echoing through the mountains, but the Jedi knew they could not afford to be delayed for long. The child was still in danger, and the Sith Master would be lurking somewhere inside the fortress. With a sudden burst of energy, the Jedi disarmed the Sith apprentice, sending their lightsaber flying into the air before knocking them to the ground with a swift kick. Breathing heavily, the apprentice glared up at the Jedi, their mask cracked, revealing eyes filled with hatred. "You can't save the child," they spat. "The dark side is too strong." The Jedi looked down at the fallen Sith, their voice calm and steady. "The dark side is only strong because you feed it with your fear, but the light will always be stronger." Without another word, the Jedi turned and continued toward the fortress. The apprentice was beaten, but the true battle still lay ahead. The gates of the fortress loomed before them, dark and imposing. But the Jedi did not hesitate. With a wave of their hand, the gates creaked open and they stepped inside. The interior of the fortress was as cold and dark as the outside. The walls were made of black stone and the air was thick with the presence of the dark side. The Jedi could feel the child's presence nearby, a small flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. But they could also sense the Sith Master, waiting. Moving silently through the halls, the Jedi followed the faint pulse of the Force, guiding them toward the child. They passed through corridors lined with ancient relics of the Sith, artifacts of a long-forgotten era, each one radiating malice. But the Jedi ignored them, focused only on their mission. At last, they came to a large chamber. In the center, standing on a raised platform, was the Sith Master, cloaked in darkness. And beside them, standing still and silent, was the child. The Jedi's heart clenched at the sight. The child's eyes were wide, filled with fear, but also with something else, hope. They hadn't been lost to the dark side. Not yet. The Sith Master turned slowly to face the Jedi, their voice low and menacing. "You've come for the child, I see, but you're too late. They are already mine." The Jedi stepped forward, their lightsaber still unlit. "The child belongs to the Force, not to you." The Sith Master chuckled darkly, raising a hand. "You're a fool to think you can stop what's already begun. The dark side is stronger than you realize. And soon, the child will understand that as well." With a flick of their wrist, the Sith Master sent a wave of dark energy toward the Jedi, who raised their hand in response, creating a shield with the Force. The two powers clashed in the air, the dark and the light pushing against each other in a battle of wills. The child watched, their small body trembling as the air around them seemed to crackle with the intensity of the confrontation. The Jedi's focus remained steady, their connection to the light side unwavering, but they could sense the struggle within the child, the pull of the dark side creeping closer. The Sith Master's influence was insidious, a poisonous whisper in the child's mind, tempting them with power, promising safety through control. "You can't resist forever," the Sith Master taunted, their voice echoing in the cold chamber. "Fear is the strongest emotion. The child already feels it. Soon they will embrace it." The Jedi glanced at the child, their heart heavy but resolute. They could see the fear in the child's eyes, the confusion that clouded their mind. But the Jedi also saw the flicker of light, the spark of hope that still remained, no matter how faint. That was what they would fight for. "You underestimate the power of hope," the Jedi said, their voice calm, yet filled with determination. "Fear can only destroy, but hope rebuilds." The Sith Master's sneer twisted beneath their hood, empty words from a dying order. With a sudden motion, the Sith ignited their crimson lightsaber and leapt forward, their strike aimed at the Jedi with brutal precision. The Jedi barely had time to ignite their own blade, the blue light humming to life just in time to parry the blow. The two lightsabers clashed with a sharp hiss, the room illuminated by the flash of red and blue. The duel began in earnest. The Sith was powerful, their strikes fueled by anger, hatred, and raw aggression. Each swing of their blade was heavy, meant to overwhelm and dominate. But the Jedi fought with a different strength. Their movements were graceful, precise, each step calculated, each block guided by the Force. They did not fight out of hatred or anger, but out of compassion, out of a desire to protect the innocent. The child watched, frozen in place, their mind torn between the two opposing forces. The darkness that the Sith had planted in their heart tugged at them, offering power, control, and freedom from fear. But the light still called to them, a whisper of peace, of balance, of something greater than the self. The child's small hands clenched into fists as they struggled to understand which path to choose. The Sith Master could sense the child's inner turmoil and sought to exploit it. "You see, child!" they called out, their lightsaber clashing violently with the Jedi's. "This Jedi is weak. They fight with ideals, with illusions, but power, true power, is right here. All you need to do is take it." The Jedi blocked another fierce strike, then spun around to create some distance between themselves and the Sith. Breathing heavily, they glanced at the child, reaching out with the Force, not to command, but to offer comfort. "You don't have to be afraid," the Jedi said gently, their voice soothing. "The dark side may promise power, but it only leads to more fear. The light offers something greater, peace, balance, and freedom. You have a choice." For a moment, the child's eyes flickered toward the Jedi, confusion clouding their gaze. The Sith Master sensed the wavering and snarled, launching another furious assault. Their red blade arced through the air, a blur of deadly precision. But the Jedi met each strike, deflecting the attacks with calm precision. The duel became a dance, the Force guiding the Jedi's every move, while the Sith fought with fury and desperation. "You cannot win," the Sith hissed, their voice filled with venom. "The child will be mine." The Jedi did not respond with words. Instead, they focused inward, reaching deep into the Force, letting it flow through them like a river. The Force was a living thing, binding all beings together, and through it the Jedi could feel the child's fear, the Sith's anger, and the delicate balance between light and dark. They knew that they couldn't defeat the Sith through combat alone. This battle wasn't just about strength, it was about the child's soul. In the midst of the clash, the Jedi reached out with the Force, not to fight, but to heal. They sent a wave of calm, of peace, toward the child, hoping to show them the truth of the light side. The Sith, sensing this, redoubled their efforts, their strikes becoming more frantic, more erratic, as if they could feel the balance tipping. "No," the Sith bellowed, their voice filled with fury. "You will not turn them against me." But the Jedi stood firm. The Force is balance. The child must choose for themselves. The room seemed to still for a moment, the air heavy with tension. The child took a hesitant step forward, their wide eyes flicking between the Sith and the Jedi. The conflict within them was like a storm, their heart racing as they struggled to decide. The Sith Master reached out with their dark power, their voice a harsh whisper. "You felt fear all your life, haven't you? Alone, powerless. The dark side will give you the strength to never feel that again. Take it. Use it." But the Jedi's voice cut through the darkness, calm and reassuring. "You don't need fear. You are already strong, stronger than you know. The Force is with you always." The child trembled, the weight of the decision almost too much to bear. For a moment they wavered, their gaze locking on to the Sith's outstretched hand, the promise of power so close. But then they looked at the Jedi, and something within them shifted. It was small, but it was enough. The warmth of the light, the hope that had flickered within them all along, began to grow. In that moment the child made their choice. They took a step toward the Jedi. "No!" The Sith roared, their fury erupting like a tidal wave of dark energy. They lunged toward the child, their red lightsaber raised high, ready to strike, but the Jedi was faster. In a flash, they stepped between the Sith and the child, their blue blade intercepting the Sith's strike with a blinding burst of light. The clash of sabers sent a shockwave through the room, and for a moment time seemed to slow. The Sith's eyes burned with rage, their face contorted with hatred. But the Jedi stood firm, their expression calm, their strength unwavering. "You will not take them," the Jedi said, their voice filled with quiet power. With a powerful push of the Force, the Jedi sent the Sith stumbling back, their lightsaber flickering as they struggled to maintain their balance. The Sith snarled, their eyes wild with fury, but they could feel it. The tide had turned. The child had chosen, and the light had won. With a final desperate scream, the Sith launched themselves at the Jedi, their lightsaber a blur of red. But the Jedi was ready. In a swift and decisive move, they disarmed the Sith, sending their lightsaber clattering to the ground. The Sith stumbled back, their power fading, their defeat inevitable. Breathing heavily, the Sith glared at the Jedi, their voice a venomous whisper. "You think you've won? The dark side is never truly defeated. It will rise again." The Jedi extinguished their lightsaber, the blue glow fading from the room. "Perhaps," they said quietly, "but not today." The Sith, beaten and broken, retreated into the shadows, their presence fading into the cold darkness of the fortress. The child watched them go, their hearts still racing, but the fear that had once gripped them was beginning to fade. The warmth of the light, the hope that had guided them, now filled the void where fear had once been. The Jedi turned to the child, kneeling down to meet their gaze. "You did well," they said softly, their voice filled with pride. "You made the right choice." The child's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief, of understanding. For the first time, the child felt the true power of the Force, not the power of domination or control, but the power of peace, of balance. "Thank you," the child whispered, their voice small but filled with gratitude. The Jedi smiled gently and placed a hand on the child's shoulder. "The Force is with you, always." Together, the Jedi and the child made their way out of the fortress, leaving behind the darkness and the cold. As they stepped out into the bright sunlight of the mountain plateau, the weight of the Sith's presence lifted, and the air seemed lighter, filled with the warmth of the light. The child looked up at the Jedi, a question in their eyes. "Will the Sith come back?" The Jedi looked out at the horizon, their expression thoughtful. "The dark side is always there," they said quietly. "But as long as there are those who believe in the light, who fight for peace and hope, the Sith can never truly win." The child nodded, understanding in a way they hadn't before. They had seen the darkness, felt its pull, but they had also felt the light, and they knew now that it was stronger. As they descended the mountain together, the Jedi knew that this was only the beginning of the child's journey. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles between the light and the dark, but for now the child was safe, their connection to the light stronger than ever. And as the two figures disappeared into the horizon, the Force remained with them, a gentle current of peace, hope, and balance that would guide them wherever they went. The race to save the child had been won, but the true journey was just beginning.